within, the next 12 hours, different teams were coming in, and it was very clear that something else was there. I actually can put myself back there in D752 and hearing it and just almost collapsing, and Liv just embracing us and saying, like, we've got this. Like, I'm a fighter, and don't cry. And she's like parenting you. She totally was. Like, I could barely stand.
Welcome to A Place of Yes, a podcast about how I moved through my darkest hour. And for me, that was in channeling my grief into good. Welcome to the show. Mellisa, I'm so happy to have you here. I can't even do a proper introduction because I have been looking forward to this conversation, which is a pretty weird thing to say because the things we were talking about, they're not easy. I wish we didn't have to talk about them. I wish we were here talking about golf like we were earlier. I want you to know how important it is to me and how happy I am that you agreed to be on this podcast.
Thank you. I was honored that you asked me, honestly.
So I was thinking this morning as I was kind of prepping for this, I was like, you and I have known each other for a long time. But it wasn't until, I want to say June, that we became closer. And it was Liv's diagnosis, I think, that sort of made me want to reach out to you and sort of be there for you. But also, I want to backtrack to before that because I don't know if you know this. I probably have talked about this, but I have admired Liv from afar for so long. I never really knew her. Like Ethan and her were sort of in sometimes the same circle, but Liv to me was always, and I think I talked about this in another podcast, but her work that she did with Best Buddies, playing unified sports, her compassion and her zest for life was just, for people who didn't even know her, they saw it. And I know you know that because you lived with her every day, but I just want you to know the impact that she had on people who did not even know her. And for me, the reason all of that meant so much was because not only am I Ethan's mom, right, but I'm Jake's mom. And we expected Jake to live, right? Like we didn't expect him to pass. Even though he was sick, we expected to have a full life with him. And unified sports and Best Buddies and all of that was the world I thought I was going to be a part of. So to see someone as vibrant and as beautiful and as all the things as Liv was have value, just to me, it could almost make me cry. So I wanted to make sure I said that.
Thank you.
With that said, can you talk about Liv? Not just someone who sort of knew her from the outside, but you're her mom, and all the things I just told you, firsthand.
So just getting back to how we met in elementary school. So we've known each other for a very, very long time when we've watched our kids grow. So you've seen Liv at her elementary, middle, and high school, years, which is probably incredible to see, but also sad to see how it ended. Liv had always been a person full of love. She loved beyond measure. She loved our family. She loved being with us. She loved people. She wanted to always help. She really was someone that also had the ability to try anything new, and she didn't need to follow the status quo, what all of her friends were doing. And I always admired her about that. And she was confident. I mean, she never played golf, and she would go out there and hit the ball. If it was lacrosse, she was absolutely terrible. She just the commitment that she put to try and put herself out there and take risks, it was just so impressive. And she honestly was like that since she was able to communicate. She always wanted to please us and receive the compliments, and she did. She was just such an incredible person to all. And even in the end, what I heard over and over was her ability to bring people together and find some sense of unity. And for an 18-year-old, that was pretty remarkable. And she met a lot of physicians and nurses, and a few of them just were in awe. They described her, and I would say the same, I'm biased, but that she's magical. She was magical. I would say she lived the best she could for 18 years. She packed in a whole lot.
She sure did. And I think magical is the right word for her because, people say things like, they fill up a room but sometimes you say things and sometimes things are real. And with her, it was real, and, so sometimes Ethan would be like, hey, Mom, I'm watching the unified game, or hey, Liv asked me to play in the game, or something to that effect. And, Ethan, I love that he did that. I was like, you should do that all the time. And he's like, Mom, it doesn't always work with my schedules. I can't. But she did. She made others around her better. it's cliche, but I feel like it is true though, right? Like some people have that magic, that ability to influence, that ability to make a difference, that ability to make people better. And she definitely had it.
I think about a card that I received from one of the physicians, and this wasn't the first time I heard this, but as a mom, as a parent, you realize that you've done some really good stuff. Like you've guided them in the right direction. And when you hear that someone 18 years old changed their perspective and how they treat patients, how they walk into situations, it made me feel really good inside and proud. I mean, also sad because we got to that point, but
it should make your heart so full.
It does. It does. And she had no idea of her impact, honestly. She really didn't. And she wasn't like a super, confident person, like everyone likes me. I mean, she just had a natural kindness with others that it was just special. And it was just safe for whether you're 2 or you were in your 40s or 60s or whatever. She was able to do that. There's so many things that she made me so proud about. What I'm most proud of is no matter what, just fighting. That grit, that resilience of our youth, for most people, it's just not there.
Yep.
That's always been there. It hasn't wavered.
I remember, and so her diagnosis day was June 6th?
Yes.
So it must have been somewhere around that. I remember Ethan sending me a text being like, "Ma, what's going on with Liv?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I don't know." And he's like, "I think something's really wrong." And I was like, "I don't know. I'll see what I can find out. I don't know." I just got, I didn't even know what to think, right? Mm-hmm. And then I don't know if it was Kelly or Joanna, but all of a sudden the word was spreading. Shortly after that, and my timing is probably going to be off on this, but you'll know what I'm talking about. I want to say it was that next week was the Student Athlete Awards. Mm-hmm. Liv was finding out that she had cancer, started treatment relatively right away. The next day. And whatever that was, 5, 6, 9 days later, was at the high school Student Athlete Awards, wearing a mask, looking radiant, swept in, got her award, which, a big award because she deserved it. And then I think went right back to the hospital.
Yes, so we actually had a few days home between that event, and then she ended up having the stroke.
Okay.
So
that was right after that.
Just before graduation.
Okay. So I think about that, though, because I think about not only Liv, but her group of girlfriends that surrounded her and kept her safe. And you, and what that must have felt like for you, because you must have been so scared too, right? She wants to be out in the world. She deserves to be, this is June of senior year. She deserves all of this.
Never, ever, ever not had a smile. And that is one of her slogans was fight with a smile. And she did every single day. If it wasn't for her incredible grit and resilience and attitude, Chuck and I, it would have been a very different experience. Sure. And I saw that while I was at the hospital. And she did that selfishly, and now looking back at some of the things that she's written, she wanted us to not suffer, so very selfless, which makes me sad because,
because you don't want your kids to take care of you yes.
Yeah. But that's how she was. And, that moment and many moments after, it was very scary because it's that difficult balance of she's 18. You want them to have that freedom, but you also know what's at stake. Yeah. Yes, you have a diagnosis, but they really don't understand.
Well, 18-year-olds in general, they don't. They're still 18, 19. They're still, you tell them things and they still sort of think, okay, you're eye roll.
Yes. And we did, especially after the stroke, she really had to take a step back with not being able to use her right side. And
so talk about that a little bit, because I think that I don't know that everyone knows that part of her story, right? So she was fighting. So was it a reaction to the chemo?
Yes. So
because that was its own separate issue.
Right.
So then you're dealing with the repercussions of a stroke, almost secondary to the cancer, or the cancer is secondary to the stroke.
Absolutely. So one of the medicines that can cause more complications, especially for older teens, is the asparaginase. And it all happens so quickly. And with blood cancer, it's immediate. The next day the port's in, you begin, it's just because they want to catch, it as quickly as possible. So it was just a whirlwind. We were going with it and we were trusting the experts.
Yep.
And I don't know even if I read more, if I would have saw this coming. But one of the things that I took away from this experience was Liv had not been well for a while. She had mono, she had COVID, she had flu, she had bronchitis. We kept on going back to the doctors. It's mono, she's going to take... She actually, when I brought her to the hospital the first time, I should have pushed harder. But again, you rely on the experts. She came out and asked, "Do I have leukemia?" Day later, she was diagnosed with leukemia. And when it's
unreal, it's unbelievable.
It really is. And when it came to the stroke, 3 days prior, I bring her back to Albany because she felt like something was off. And she knew her body.
I was going to say in tune to her body.
And I brought
her.
And
an athlete, so knows how her body feels.
Right. I brought her and they said, "Oh, it's common with this type of medication and things. It's neuropathy." 3 days later, she ends up having a stroke. And it probably could have been prevented. But she called it. She said, "I think I have a clot." She had a clot that went to her brain. And that brought us to the PICU for several days. And she had right-sided weakness. Within about 5 days or so, she was feeling at least some sensation in her leg. Okay. It took probably 6 to 8 weeks for her arm to be able to actually move it.
Wow. Okay.
And it was her right side, and she's dominant right-sided. So
how was she during this? This is a big hit. Your inability to move when you're someone who has been like a gymnast, mm-hmm. field hockey, just mobile.
For me, as a mom looking, it was we all thought she was going to pass because it was seizure activity.
Okay.
It was
okay.
They actually said we don't know if she's going to make it.
So
once we got through that, I was like, okay, we can do anything.
We got this,
right? And Liv immediately when she came to was like, we've got this. She didn't cry that she didn't have her right side. She was so grateful that she was alive, but she also was scared that I don't ever want to have a stroke. Essentially, she had a stroke at 18 ever again. She was more scared about having another stroke, which it was much more greater as when you have
once
one,
you've had one to have a second.
And the seizures, then fighting cancer. So, she couldn't go to the bathroom. She couldn't eat. Going from being so independent. I would have to bathe her. And I'm sure internally she was struggling. To me, on the outside, she was like, if I could do this, I'm going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And that was
if we do this, then
I'm going to be fine. And bringing her to Sunnyview and hanging out with all of the stroke adult patients was just such a crazy experience. And she did it with a smile. Every aspect of it was just beaming with I'm going to get this.
I want to touch on two things that you said. One is, and one because I feel like this is sort of a recurring theme on this podcast. And I always have to try and be careful with my words because you had a great team, Jake had a great team. And doctors are humans, right? We hold them to these standards where we expect them to be perfect, and they should be effing perfect because it's our kids. You know what I mean? It's a really hard thing. And when I hear you talk about, Liv being sick for so long, and I kind of know that, right? It's easy to look at things in isolation. It's like, okay, it's mono. That makes sense. That's why she's so tired. Okay, she just got over COVID. It took me forever to get over COVID. You know what I mean? Like you can look at all these things and they make sense, but she kind of knew, you kind of know. I always feel the biggest message we can give, from my experience, from your experience, is to push back, right? To just advocate. And I learned that lesson too late. It's such a recurring theme to people who are on this podcast and to people who have experienced what we've experienced.
There was a big discussion about Liv by all of the players. And as terrible as it was, I'm also a learner and I have an open mind. What saddened me most, and I think this would be one of the top three things Liv would say, is at 18, she felt like she wasn't heard. And so when we circled back again, because she was very, very ill and I couldn't get her off the floor, the main physician leaned against the door and I said, I noticed that you were here on Saturday and now you're back here on Monday. What are you thinking you are getting out of this visit? We ended up sitting there for probably 8 or 9 more hours. And so,
Are you serious?
Yeah, I think they really thought that we were just trying to take advantage of the system. They thought she was pregnant. All of these things.
Oh my God.
And
it's like, when did things shift that we don't put people first, right? Like, when did that shift? And I don't know when that happened, but.
Well, I think because we don't have enough people to provide care.
Yep.
And then insurance, everything is, we got to do this first. And and in that day, it was June 6th, I will never forget for the rest of my life. We, transitioned from, after being there for hours to a room, and then.
So that was diagnosis day.
So we entered on the 6th. They basically seemed like they were doing us a favor because I said we're not leaving until we have more answers. And so they ended up putting us on D7 to do more testing. And within, the next 12 hours, different teams were coming in, and it was very clear that something else was there. And I actually can put myself back there in D752 and hearing it and just almost collapsing, and Liv just embracing us and saying, like, we've got this. Like, I'm a fighter. We've got this. And don't cry. And
she's like parenting you.
She totally was. Like, I could barely stand. And when Chuck left that night, we put our bed, we called it mega bed.
I saw pictures. Yeah.
And so we would sleep very close every night. And she was like my cheerleader. I should have, I'm so sorry.
No.
I should have been more for her. I was, but.
You were.
It was.
And it goes back to what you said. You should be so proud because, yes, she's her own person, but you allowed her to be the person that she is because you gave her the freedom to be who she was. It's beautiful. It's so classic Liv that this is the story you're telling, right? Mm-hmm. That she is laying in the hospital telling you it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. She really thought it was going to be okay. And even her last couple weeks when she transitioned, her gene mutated to AML. And if you go online, like, we tried to agree, and I'm sure she did search, but I spent less time searching because I didn't want to know the answer. One of the things that I took away from this experience was advocacy, and we've talked about that. I believe wholeheartedly that I was able to communicate. You were able to. You knew your players, and you were able to push. And I feel that's where our work could be. Is to help others that aren't. I have been so grateful for the team that I had and Dr. Halligan, and we consulted with a provider in Boston Children. We worked with Rochester. That wasn't enough, and so I have, I guess, some comfort in knowing that we did absolutely everything we could to provide her the care that she deserved. And as a mom, one of the things I've also thought about was guilt. Like, a lot of times you have guilt. And obviously I have guilt that I'm here and she's not, right? But as a parent and a caregiver, I am so grateful that our community, people like you, Kelly's Angels, you name it, allowed us this opportunity for me to be with her day in and day out. And that provided her a level of comfort and love. Sure. Like, I said this yesterday to a group of my friends. I said, there's not 1 ounce of me that has regret, like, in what we did as a family going into this.
And that's a gift, right?
It is such a gift. And because getting into all of these support groups and stuff like that's a big piece. Like, I would have, should have, could have. I would have given my whole body to save my daughter.
Goes without saying, 100%. Yeah.
And, I know 100% that with her team at the Melody Center and the other providers working, and then our family and friends, like, we were supported. Yeah. And that is a testament to Liv, also us, like
100%.
Right? So
yes.
And, I look at other people, again, not having those things. And when I go back to...
there's part of that, and this sounds weird, but it has to feel good. The love that surrounded her and you guys, and still does, has to feel good.
It does.
And,
you know that you've done something right, and I really believe that, if you're a kind human and, that you work hard and you're open-minded, and I've always been someone to be open to all. And I know that I taught my children that as well. And people like former students that are in their 30s reached out. Some of them even showed up to her service. And, that's your legacy.
Yes.
Like, that's who that's what you want. And although Liv only lived 18 years, she did that in the school setting, outside of the school setting. I mean, I couldn't be more proud.
No.
I wish I could tell her over and over. I know she hears me, but she just has no idea.
The impact. Mm-hmm. So you had started to talk about like when you knew it was time. I remember that, and I think I told you this story. Brian and I were in Jamaica, and I woke up in the morning and I'd had this kind of dream about Liv, and I was kind of like, Like I just kind of had that, and I texted Kelly and I was like, hey, how's everything with Liv? And she called me, and I didn't pick up right away because I texted her, I was like, hey, I'm in Jamaica. And she was like, call me back. And I was like, oh shit. And she said, Riley was coming home and the girls were coming home and it was time. So what had happened?
So from what I understand, Liv now is the third case that they can find that her B-cell ALL mutated to AML. AML is very, very aggressive. Yeah, some people can survive, but the survival rate is like 7%, under 3 years. And immediately when that information came to Liv and I, we had Liv's nurse and Dr. Halligan looking at us, and she's like, this is not what we hoped for, what we expected. And, of course, I'm in tears. Liv looked and she goes, you know what? I feel like this is not a bad thing. I didn't get into remission right away with ALL. Maybe now with this new diagnosis, I will. And it's not changing the outcome because we still had to do bone marrow transplant. Yeah. So in her mind, she was already like in a better spot. I mean, I was like curled up.
Yeah, you're like in the fetal position.
As soon as she fell asleep, I was like, I'm just a mess.
And she's already figuring out how to power through.
And I loved that perspective because, most people are going to go down a rabbit hole, right? And say, okay, what else can I deal with? She wasn't that way at all. And it's hard to do.
Yes.
A lot of people can't do that. And, even if someone has thrown a curveball at me, I'm like trying to find the silver lining. Yep. And I've always talked to my children about that and the importance of, the greater good. Sometimes it doesn't feel well, but like how what are we learning? What are we doing? And how are we growing? And she had that mindset, it was like, okay, this is a roadblock, but what are we going to do?
Like, how are we going to,
right? Yeah. And so, even though we had some dark days with news, you wouldn't have known
that.
You wouldn't have, in that setting, she was taking every moment. Nurses, people would come off their not be on their shift and come and see Liv. Like, we found ways to celebrate because she brought people in because of her infectious smile and attitude. And that made all the, I always say to the nurses, the few that I still speak with and the doctor, they made her last 10 months better than it ever could have been. If you were given anything, right? She left feeling so much love had a lot of laughter until the last few
right
days.
To the end, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember Kelly telling me, like, she's cracking jokes.
Mm-hmm. She was. And that was her defense mechanism. Yeah, we know that. And I'm like, oh my God, she, literally a few hours before they said, like, it's just going to be probably within the next, 12 hours. And we ended up at, I think it was like 3:00 in the afternoon. And then by 2:05, she passed. Between 2 and 5, she was still like aware and having conversations. She would say, Mom, I just need to sleep 5 more hours and I'm going to be all better.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. And she really believed that. And
what a beautiful outlook. What a testament to her love for her family and the life that you guys gave her. She loved her life so much. She fought to the very, very end. Mm-hmm. And that is beautiful. She valued life. And I think that is like her legacy, right? Because so many people are so careless with their life, right? Like, and don't recognize the gift that it is. And she just hung on to it to the very end. It's just...
Mm-hmm. I don't know how many times she actually said it. I was just like, you're absolutely right.
You're like take a nap.
Sweet
girl.
And when she passed, I shared this with you, I wanted to find something that she wanted me to know. which I know she wanted me, she did say an awful lot, but one of the things, and this when you talk about careless humans or people just making terrible decisions, the last entry was, please God. And she was, I mean, she's not a super religious human. And please God, I'm begging you. I just want to live, ... When I read that, I just cried. And I wouldn't wish. And that's where I bring myself back all the time is I want joy for others. I would never, like you and I sitting here, I would never want anyone to go through this. I think sometimes people don't realize how lucky they are. And like, again, that's another gift. You know, we have a change of, I mean, I always had a pretty good perspective, but like I really.
It changes you.
Right.
I think you are doing a much more gracious job than I did because I had and sometimes still have such a hard time, right? Because life is such a gift and so many people, like you said, the careless and the bad decisions. And Lord knows I've made plenty of bad decisions and will likely continue to. So I'm not even saying that. So I'm not saying that in this like judgmental way. If people could stop for 1 second and if they could think about what the loss means and what forever means, it's just heartbreaking. And you can pick up your pieces and you can live your life and you can share, like you can do all the things that we are doing. It's still there. It's just still there. The hole is there. The hurt is there. The sad is there. And you just want people to know that. And you can, you know what I mean? People need to get there in their own ways, but you're being gracious. Sometimes when I was like right after Jake died, I was angry. Like I was very like, sometimes had to like check myself because things would make me so mad.
And I think I definitely have thought a lot about this, and we've had a couple different conversations about, some recent events here. And, I keep reminding myself, well, one, you can imagine now how that parent, right, or sister, brother, whatever, feel, because we're now in this together. And again, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but I keep going back to if someone wished that on me, like I don't operate that way. And so it does make me pause. And I do, I mean, there's so many terrible things happening around the world, and Liv and Jakey should not have been, and many others should not have been the kids that were taken too soon. And, I had to really sit with there's no choice.
Yes, it's not a
negotiation. Right?
It's not if this then that.
And that's I struggle with the whole bargaining. There's no bargaining.
No,
right?
But still I don't know. I still sometimes wish I could have. I wish you could negotiate, bargain, do the things. I'm really fixated now on her let me nap for 5 hours, and I get her fight to the very end. And I knew she fought to the end, but I'm going to keep that inside of me, and I think that is. It's really powerful.
People that were around her, which, were in awe. And I wish I could just read all of the messages. I mean, you saw some of them on social media, but some of the private messages that I received, just in awe of that, And one of the other things that stood out to me, too, was, she developed a really good relationship with her oncologist. And
of course she did.
I honestly, I think she could have moved in with her and immediately, and they would have, lived happily ever after. But I'll never forget. Dr. Halligan looked at me and she's like, I'd like to have a moment with Liv and have this conversation. And of course, mommy mode was if I'm not there, I can't protect her.
Yeah.
I can't temper it. I can't soften.
Can't
this,
soften
right?
it. Can't.
She's one of the softest humans I've ever met. And we're very much alike. And the only person she trusted in that hospital was her. I don't know. I never came out and asked. I don't know if the doctor felt like she failed. In my mind, I would never, ever go there, right? I know. This person sacrificed so much of her being and time and love for my child. I know. She would have given her whole
everything
self,
for
right?
it to be able to.
And Dr. Halligan sitting at the side of her bed, and she would always say, "Lovey." And Liv looks at her and she said, "I'm going to spend tonight just looking at different clinical trials. Maybe on Saturday you could come and we'll just sit and explore and see what my options are." Now, she had heard less than 15 minutes earlier, we don't have a cure.
And she's already she's looking to try.
She had a plan. And I said, "You're absolutely right. Liv," I said, we have options. I always said
there's always options.
There's always options, right? And you hope that options will present itself, and you hope that she's going to be the one. And I knew at that point, no matter how Liv felt, there wasn't. It was just a matter of
you knew that we had reached this.
Right. Is it going to be a week or is it going to be 2 months? And, I was hopeful for 2 months. I would have taken anything. But looking back now and watching what I saw was the most traumatic. She obviously was drugged up and didn't experience that. And I can only imagine like her friends are really struggling. I couldn't imagine for my personal benefit to say, let's keep her on all of this stuff so that I can have
so that I can
week.
sit next to her. Yeah.
And when I talked with the doctor, I said, you are the expert. I'm trusting you. And I said, you tell me.
You got to guide me.
Yeah, what to do. Like I'm going to follow your step, and I trust that you're making the best decision for my child, who you absolutely love too. And she said, this is what I think, will happen and what we should do. And I said, okay.
Let's do it.
Honestly, again, that's another thing where I don't feel guilt. Could we have maybe kept her alive for another?
But there's alive and there's living and there's,
it wasn't.
By doing it the way you did, you honored everything about Liv, right?
Yeah. I mean, she didn't eat for 2 weeks. So she was suffering. She didn't realize she was suffering, but, and just like not even willing to or able to get out of bed. Again, she didn't think of it that way.
Yeah, no, that's not how she looked at it.
Right,
but that's where,
We saw that. And so a few hours before she passed, I had stepped in the bathroom, and I want to cry because if she actually woke up, I didn't want her to see me cry, right? Because I'm the strongest person. So I said, I'm going to text her. I had texted her earlier, and sometimes she would remember that she didn't have her phone or would seek, 18-year-olds want
They're
their
like
phone.
Attached.
And I'm like, please just text me back so I have one more thing. Oh. And she did. And she said, I love you more than you'll ever know. It was
Melissa. I'm going to overuse this word, but it's kind of a gift too. I mean,
my God. I can't believe. I mean, she wasn't texting people back. You know what I mean? I just put it out there. Like, if anything, can you say whatever I want you to say to me? Because I want to.
Because I need this. I need this right now, and she knew that. So now you can never, ever, ever lose that phone.
I will never. I've taken so many screenshots.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Never,
it's in Google.
ever.
It's CVS.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
That describes everything.
It's like in a nutshell. It's exactly.
Yeah. And people have said you two had the most beautiful relationship. We and Sophia, our family, we just love each other.
It's genuine.
And they wanted to hang out with us, which, I was like, what is going on? I work with high school students that have nothing.
This is not normal.
I try to find that silver lining. Was it meant to be that way? Were we always supposed to be that close because our time was not
going to be short?
I don't know.
I less so now, but I always sort of, because it's you try so hard to justify or make a reason or an explanation, right? It's not the negotiation, but it's that same idea, right? You want to understand. You want to understand why my family, and we've looked at it that way sometimes too. It's because we could shower so much love and we could handle the sickness and we could make a life out of that. We could make a life out of something really shitty that some people couldn't, and we made an okay life. And Jake only lived 4 years, but and we couldn't do a ton with him, but we did everything we could. We would go to the city and we would go to Lake Placid, and Ethan would do all of these things in front of Jake so that Jake kind of could watch and do it too,
I feel sad for us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Boy.
Yeah.
But I guess you have to try to make sense of it. And that, I guess I think a lot about that as well. I guess we don't have to make sense. I've been thinking about,
sometimes,
terrible things happen.
But sometimes it's so hard, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I want a reason still after all this time. And it is. It's just the randomness of it scares me. And I will say, honestly, sometimes I never went to therapy for any of this stuff. Sometimes I'm maybe I should. Because I do think, for me, I need to try to make sense of it, because if I think it's all just random, it's hard for me to live. It's hard for me to be Ethan's mom if it's just shitty bad luck and random. I want to talk about Sophia a little because I don't know her well at all, but I will say at Liv's service, the way she stood up there in front of all of those people with Aubrey, and they both just were so impressive. I mean, for a 16 and an 18-year-old girl to get up there after they had lost their sister and their best friend and talk in front of people. I mean, it was amazing. Sophia seems to carry herself with grace. I mean, it's got to be hard. How is she doing?
It is very hard. And LIke Liv, she's magical in her own way. I mean, to be able to do that was just incredible.
Stunning. I mean, unbelievable.
What I found I needed to do was I wanted her to be part of the process, because I think what I did wrong was I should have included her more. Like, it's getting to this point.
You were trying to protect her.
Yeah. And, she's 16. And, so again, going back to she created her own narrative. Like, so I think she would have done things differently. And I should have trusted that she, like, given her an option. If I could have a do-over, that would be it. So moving forward towards the service and stuff, my goal was, like, how do you want to be involved? And if you don't, that's okay
too. But but giving her the options to
the prayer card, she picked out that, and then I said, I don't need anyone to speak, but you two had such an incredible bond, and they look a lot alike. They're 2.5 years apart, but they just Liv begged nightly, will you sleep with me? All the way up until the bitter end. I mean, even in like the last few days, Liv, we were all together, so they had a really special relationship. All the time we would say Liv, or Soph was like Liv's little mommy, because because she has a natural caring way, and she's very aware. What I found most impressive not only was the speaking, but in the last several days, and I'm sure like Kelly and a few others would say this, like, she read the room. She knew that I wasn't in a place. She shouldn't have been in a place, right?
Yep.
Now I'm looking, I'm like, how did I not,
because you're just
right.
So,
right. So, and she was tending to all of the adults. She was, trying to bring people together. So an adult was crying, her hand is on the leg. I mean, this kid is just, she's a great, great person, and a lot like Liv in many ways. She's struggling. Obviously it's quiet.
It's different to be an only child.
She's very fearful about being an only child. Now it's that this can happen, right?
Yeah.
And so thinking a lot about our health and well-being, and, being left alone. She had said, like, who do I talk to, right? And I don't have an answer, right? And that's the part that I have struggled with her and communicating with people as a whole. Like, life is not guaranteed, right? Nothing is guaranteed, but you really don't expect it to happen to you until it does. It affects every ounce of you, right? It cuts you at your core. And for her, she wasn't really great about immediately articulating, and for her core is cut. Like, she is splintered. She doesn't know where she fits in a family, and what her future is going to look like.
And at 16, it's not to simplify this, but at 16, life is hard anyways, right? Because you're hard. Like hormonal and emotional, and you love your parents, and you hate your parents, and you love your sister, then you hate your sister. Like, like, part of being 16 is just fundamentally difficult.
Very difficult.
And then you throw this piece into it, no matter how well-rounded or grounded or anything. It's such an accurate way to describe it, like, kind of cut at her core.
Again, I was trying to take her lead, but as a counselor working with teens, I was always checking in. Checking in for Liv was acceptable. Like, she loved my attention. Sophia's much more independent, and I thought I was doing like all of the right mom things, and trying to hold myself together and check in with her. And then we went to therapy, and she was like, I feel like when you do that, you're expecting a reaction, and maybe I'm not prepared for that reaction. I was like,
oh, wow. That's pretty articulate.
So I'm like, I am so sorry. I felt like I needed to, right? And she's like, well, when you do that, I feel like I have to have a reaction. And I said, well, what will work for you, right? Because I know how I am, and I am a fixer. I want, everything. And I know now I can't fix everything, right? So which that really
it's hard.
Me
Yes.
to the core too. And she's like, trust me. Trust that I will come to you. She's 16. Like, it took me, I was blown away. I was like, how can you be sitting here with one of the greatest losses and give me guidance, right? And I've had to check myself, because I'm trying to, take her lead and allowing her to tend to her grief the way she wants to at this point. And I drop the reminders, like, if this doesn't get attention, right, then it comes out in different ways. And that worries me. And her safety and well-being is is my, utmost priority.
Well, and it becomes, you just can't imagine anything ever. You know what I mean? Like, it's like this, like, I don't even want to say the words, right? Like, but I couldn't survive it again. And I have to sometimes be careful that I don't take my crazy anxiety when I let those thoughts go there. I have to keep them so inside. I can't put that on anyone else.
You can't.
It's real, know,
it's
and
so real and intense.
Intense and just terrifying, like breathtaking. Like it can take my breath away.
With Liv being 18 and all of these little milestones and, kids getting sick and stuff, it's my immediate go-to now.
Yeah.
Where I never would have gone to the negative. I know that in order for Sophia to be a healthy human, an adult, I have to keep that checked.
I find that is the residual of the loss that we've had, right? Is like how to keep that in check and how to not let it ruin our lives, but also you don't want to bottle it in, but you don't want to screw up our other kids because of it.
Mm-hmm. The relationship is
Yes.
most important, right?
Yes.
I mean, you have grown to develop such a wonderful relationship with Ethan, and that's my goal. Like
Yes.
I can't take away the loss, but I can be more mindful about how we communicate
And how she wants you to communicate
right.
with it.
And that I'm very I love control.
Yeah.
and I love structure and everything. And that is growing pains for me.
It's hard. Yeah.
It really is. And, like you said, like just being able to, hey, can I go to my friend's who's now driving and she's going to pick me up? I'm like,
all those things, like you're in those
to.
stages, you're in those stages that are without our loss impossibly hard, right? Like, but there's a little extra to them. Mm-hmm. They will be changed people because of this. I tend to look at it in where I think that they carry with themselves, like whether it's maturity or compassion or both, kind of all of the,
Mm-hmm.
I believe they're going to go forward in this life and be of service, like just have a kinder view.
I've already seen her frustration level for other people making terrible decisions. She's expressing it. How could they? Liv just wanted to live, and I, you do have to remind them, like, they are still growing and learning, and even adults make mistakes, but she's very black and white, and I think probably more so now than ever. Like this, we have to take it serious. And, I see the positive and negative with that. I also believe that she just has this internal drive to now, like, do more as a result. Like, how, whether it's, can I come up with something to, some sort of treatment or better care or
wherever that will be, she will.
I mean, one of the things that she asked last week, she's like, can we make a plan and go see this young man who his mother passed away and his father passed away, and he had been in PICU while we were there and was there for almost a year.
Oh, wow.
Like we just connected with him.
Yep.
When Liv started treatment on D7, we would go and meet him. She'd have one arm. They would play the ball and bowling in the little space.
Yeah.
But Sophia would always come. She loves him. She was just like, I want to go back. Like he doesn't have the support like we have. And I was just like, here you are.
That's
thinking again about other people.
That's awesome.
And at 16, that doesn't happen.
No.
Chuck and I have been given a gift, but they, I think we have given them the gift of trying to find like the silver lining of good in all. And I think that's going to carry them.
When did the Live Like Liv start? A, it's so catchy. Mm-hmm. B, it's so contagious.
Her two things that she would say is, I'm going to fight with a smile. And so that was one of the slogans. Yep. And then Live Like Liv. She would get disappointed in others that may have had like bad situation too and not give their best. And she's like, I'm here. I'm fighting. Like, this is your only option. And she really believed that. I believed that for her. I believed that for all of us, actually. I think that it gave her, I guess it wrapped her up in one. Honestly.
Yep.
And it stuck. And it captured the attention of, the U.S. women's field hockey team to D1, and people saw that. And she's been dealt a very bad hand, very unlucky. But to take something so terrible and try to find some joy and to fight, and everyone should want that, and she really wanted that, and I'm hopeful like that message stays.
Well, it's her legacy. I mean, it is. I can't think of a better one.
She would say, I want to make cancer look good. and
And
a
she
lot
sure
of
did.
times she did. And, some days she really impressed me. I was like, I can't even look like that on my really good day. And I was like, make me fab too, But she did that. And I guess it just came natural. Like there wasn't she just said it, and
I was thinking that was it, but I didn't know if there was like a family thing or something like that, if there was like a hidden
No,
thing.
I mean, she wanted people to be like her. Like, yes, we're unlucky right now.
Yeah.
But I'm lucky right
But I'm
now.
not
I have options.
Yeah.
And that's again, I would always say we have options. Like a lot of people don't have options, right? I think that really guided her into, this mindset of I'm here. I don't have a choice. She would say that. I don't have an option.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't pick it, but here I am.
For anyone, young or old, to see someone who was so unlucky still have an incredible attitude, like that's impressive. And she did that.
Again, it goes without saying, I wish we were here talking about our golf game. You know what I mean? Like I do. But there's so much. There's so much in what you shared, and there's so much in just your girls and in Liv to just be proud of. And I think that she has left us with this legacy. It's almost like she had the foresight, right? Mm-hmm. When she says something like live like Liv, because it is contagious, and it is something to, like when Ethan wore his shirt in France, I was like, that's it. Like that is,
it's simple
this
message,
is it. It's just
right?
the message. It's just the thing.
And if we did all operate with that mindset, what a place we would be.
What a place it would be.
Right?
And it's just such a gentle reminder, right? Like it's like, because no one can be on 100% of the time, but it's a reminder that we have options, that you're looking at the world this way and you can flip the switch.
Mm-hmm. She was born with a growth mindset, and that doesn't happen very often.
No.
It was like you said, she had the foresight of like who knows? This was our plan.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't our plan.
No, but I do. You said this before, and sometimes I find comfort, and maybe it's because I'm so far in this sort of like journey of whatever, but I find comfort, like when you say like you guys loved so hard, and you know what I mean? Like you never wish to bury your kids. Your kids should be burying us. Like, I mean, that goes without saying. But since it did, you had these 18 years of just joy.
Sure.
Oh, Mellisa, I'm so grateful for you for having this conversation with me.
So much more to talk about, too.
Thank you so much, Mellisa, for being here. I appreciate you, and I have loved this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to A Place of Yes. Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend, anybody who might benefit from listening to this. It would make a world of difference if we could just reach more people and share the work that we do and the stories we want to tell. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave us a thumbs up or leave us a comment. We would appreciate all that you can do. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend or two.